welcome to another episode of Dees Talk. Today my guest is John Woolf from A-List Management. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, John is a dear friend for many years.
Yes.
And I'm glad to have him on to share some of his insights
I'm glad to be here.
on your long journey through the music industry.
I mean, yeah, you've been there from day one.
Yeah, just to add to the viewers and listeners, we have a extra guest here who is Layla, John's
Sorry.
dog.
Yeah, she comes with me everywhere.
So she might be intermittently jumping in and out of the scenes.
Yeah. This is her podcast debut, though, everyone.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. How old is she now?
She's 1 in a month.
Wow. So how come you decided to get a dog?
I think dogs are better than people. I've always had dogs and I love the energy that dogs give you.
Yeah.
I just think they're just so happy to see you, and it's just pure love, you know? So it's nice.
Totally.
I think it's what I needed in my life.
Really?
So,
Why?
Yeah. No, it's just nice to have that companionship.
Have someone to cuddle.
Yeah, it's nice.
Get that oxytocin.
Yeah, and someone's so happy to see you when you come home, and just good vibes, you know?
Yeah, it's true. They are always happy to see you.
Yeah.
I guess there's no... Yeah. Let's start off with how you first got into the music industry then. As a good sort of start to give a bit of context.
So I started out not knowing what I wanted to do in music, but I just knew I wanted to do something in music. I started out, as you might remember, just like DJing or wanting to produce music or just wanting to do anything. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something in music.
You're just attracted to the industry.
Yeah, I was lucky. I grew up around people that were in music, and it was just something where it was what kind of made me happy, in DJing or putting on parties or just kind of being involved in stuff was just what I was just drawn to. And then it was like, it was then sort of like, it started out DJing, putting on parties, then being in studios. And then from there, trying to produce things or remix things. And then people would then I just got more and more drawn to the business side of things. And people just kept sort of asking me to manage them or do things, or, I just sort of, opportunities seemed to come my way in terms of like, someone when I was 19 asked me if I wanted to do an internship at a record label in New York, and I think that changed my whole perspective of what I thought I wanted to do, in terms of I liked being on the other side of the business, in terms of like being on the more like industry side as opposed to
the artist.
Yeah,
So you never wanted to be a big DJ if you started off DJing? Because even now, when you have your birthday party, you always get on the decks.
No, it's just like my party trick. Like I still love it. It's in my heart, but I was never good enough to be that. But yeah, I might have had ambitions or whatever. But I think what I realized I was good at was how to communicate with artists or other people and navigate around the industry. But I still had the sensibility in my heart of like how I felt when I was like trying to be a DJ, or when I was trying to be a producer, and I understood what that felt like to someone,
like what the good feeling is of getting
the smallest thing,
good reaction from a crowd when you drop a tune or when you do a good mix.
The smallest things, do you know what I mean? Like, and insecurities you can feel of, I got that wrong or this or that, and how to help or communicate to someone, like a perfect example, we have a songwriter we've recently started working with called Kiddo, and I don't think she'll mind me telling this story, but like the other day we had a big session for her in Los Angeles with huge producers, and she texted me that she was feeling really nervous like before going in the session, and she, she's really talented and she's had a lot of success as a songwriter, and I said to her, they should be lucky to have you, at the same time, yeah, it's good to have nerves, but at the same time, you should never doubt yourself. Like, no one is better than someone because they've had more hits or they've done more things. Like, you bring as much to this party as they do.
So with your artists, you just book them in with random producers who you think might be a fit, and you say, right, the session's booked at this time, turn up and get creative in this room with them.
Well, no,
it's kind of hope it works.
It's less random. It's more kind of calculated in terms of, okay, well, we think this could be a good fit with this makes sense with this, and occasionally it's like you try something super random and it can work, sometimes I've been lucky that it has worked, and other times it hasn't worked, but you have to try and think, with producers or writers we work with, it's about thinking who could work well with who and how something can work. That's more what it is. You try and find combinations of people that you think this could bring something special.
Right.
You know, it's not just kind of like, oh, here's a random person, go hang out with each other.
Because you've got under your management both DJs, producers, singers, rappers.
Yeah.
What's your anything else?
So yeah, we've got producers, songwriters, DJs, rappers. Yeah, that's kind of
And then
our
like do you
wheelhouse.
sort of like mix them up amongst themselves, or
No,
is it generally each one is tailored?
Everyone is its own person. You know, if people want to work with each other, amazing. But you know, we see everyone as their own people, and we're starting to get into the rights business now. We started a record label with Jake Gosling, who's a producer we look after, and sorry, I just didn't want her to chew your wires. We started a record label with Jake Gosling, who we look after, because it's important for us to be in the rights business, because as much as management is cool, management is a fickle business, and it could be that I manage you today, but you know, you might not like me tomorrow, and
Right.
if we fall out, or you think I'm not a good manager, or Layla's a better manager, then and she agrees with that, then you know, what do we have? You know, if we're trying to sell a business in 5-10 years time, we need to own rights or things. So it's like we can find great people, and it's about being involved in the rights business. So we're the record label or the publishing company.
So as a manager, you're just getting what, a percentage of all the artists you're managing's annual income?
Yeah, exactly that. So we're getting 20% of their income.
Is that always what the deal is?
Yeah, it's always
That's
what the
quite
deal is. Yeah,
easy then. It's not too
Look,
complicated.
sure, but at the same time, you know, it's like,
Is that
if
20% of everything?
yeah, but at the same time, if we're working with an artist from scratch, you know, say my dog here, Layla, became a performing dog,
Right.
and we have to take her from the very beginning, and we've got to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
There might be a year or two where we're
Invest.
not making any money, you know, and it might take 2 years for her to become, you know, to a point where it's a sustainable business. So it's like in those early years, if we're partnering with an artist and we're self-releasing records or this and that, it should be more of a 50-50 or something, because we're actually having to become a record label. We're not.
It should be.
Yeah, but that's what we push for, because
You push for 50-50.
or where we can.
Depending on where they are.
Yeah, but
right.
if it's a brand new thing, and we have to be the record label, we have to assume every role above management, then it's a different thing. If it's like an already established thing and brand comes to us, then it's a different thing. Then
Yeah. So excited. We just had to cut quickly because Layla decided to pull the plug on the whole operation.
I'm sorry, my dog didn't want me giving away insider knowledge. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we were saying sometimes you can get 50-50 then.
Yeah.
Is that like an early, like over the next 2 years we'll get 50-50, and then as you get bigger
Exactly
we'll,
that,
we'll
yeah.
like,
So it's like if it's like brand new artists with nothing going on, and we've got to be more than the manager, we've got to be the record label, we've got to be everything, then in that situation we try and push for, you know, 40 or 50%, because in that situation we're doing so much more than being a manager. We're being a record label, we're being, you know, a publisher, we're being everything in that situation, and it's like we have to be remunerated accordingly, because otherwise it's crazy. You know, once obviously they get bigger, obviously it scales down, you know, like, because that's just.
and they can just leave you then, or what's the deal with the contracts you have with them? Is it like I have you for life 20%?
No.
I invest in you.
No, that's the thing. There's no kind of loyalty in management. But then, you know, if they leave, you've got a sunset clause of say like 5 and 5 years, you know, and it's like 5 years at the rate you've negotiated and 5 years at a lesser rate. But that's the thing.
So how does a sunset clause work?
So say I'm managing you and you leave us tomorrow. Everything that we've done together during the term of our management period, from the day we've started to the day you fire us, we will then commission on for 5 years at the agreed rate that we agreed. And then it will decrease to, say, 10% for additional 5 years.
Right. Okay. So you're still earning.
But that's why you want to be in the rights business. You know, that's why we're doing this record label with Jake. That's why, you know, we're looking at other labels and ventures we want to do, because in the rights business, we have much longer terms. We can do things for much longer periods of time. Hold on. Layla, do you want to come here? I know you want to be in a podcast. Hold on a second. I'll just put her on the sofa. Sorry.
Yeah, put it on the sofa. Or stick it in the other room where there's lots of fun toys and a child to play with.
My child doesn't want to play with.
I know. This has been a good test of a good reason for me to not get a dog for my daughter. She's been bugging me for a dog the whole time. And now I give her a dog to play with, and all she's doing is playing iPad. So, okay.
Everyone should be happy.
These will be some good outtakes on this one.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you were saying...
Yeah, I was just saying, that's why for us it's important to be in the rights business.
Yeah, so being in the rights business is then you own, what, a percentage of the publishing?
No, so we're going to be in the master business, so like record label. So it's like our job with Jake, and we're going to set up a label with Elderbrook, is to then sign artists or sign singles where we'll have rights to those singles for like 15 or 20 years, and it doesn't matter if like that person leaves us or does whatever. With a label, we've got rights for 15, 20 years.
So on the masters, that's basically, just to give a sort of super quick lesson in how these rights work. I know they're very complicated, and there's...
No, I can explain in the most...
Yeah, explain, because this is quite educational
sure.
for like how the music industry works. And it's, when I've tried to look into it, it's been a bit complicated, so it's interesting to hear.
So what would you like me to explain first?
So what are the rights? Because for understand, there's one for the where it's recorded, who's sung, who's produced it, who's
Of course. So initially you have record label, right? Own the master is kind of, if there's a pie chart, and for one song, 100%, right? So the artist, let's say Die, is signed to Layla Records, right? Then Layla Records owns the master recordings. Layla Records will then do a deal with you and say, okay, Die, we're an independent label. We'll do a deal 50-50. So then it's like you have 50% of the master, we have 50% of the master, and that's how it kind of works. And as I was explaining to you earlier, if we do 1 million streams on a song on Spotify, that equates to $4,000 in income, just like layman's terms.
Right.
So then,
is that always the case?
It is always the case.
Right.
Yeah.
So 1 million streams,
Spotify.
£4,000
on Spotify. Yeah.
Okay.
So then, if we're on a 50-50, you're getting £2,000 per million streams, and we're getting 2,000. The 4,000 goes to the rights holder. So we're the rights holder. We're the record label, but we've done a deal with you 50-50. Because that's like an indie deal, would be 50-50.
So then you distribute her.
If we're just a it depends. Like distribution companies, you might be 70-30 in your favor, or 80-20. If we're just a distributor. If we're a major label, if I'm Warner or Sony or Universal, you would be on 20 or 25%, and I would be on 80 or 75%. Because in that situation, I'm giving you an advance. It's a recoupable advance. But I'm giving you, say, here's $100,000. You've got to recoup that before you then see any money. And then once you've seen that money, this is the rate. So artists like Drake or Taylor Swift or other massive artists have taken enormous advances from their labels, but then their royalty rate is much lower because the label's got to recoup the money.
So does the label get 100% of the money back until it's fully recovered, and then it's split 80-20 or 50-50?
Exactly that. So like with, say, like Drake, for example, Drake took, I think, 200 or 300 million pounds from Universal, and then the rate he's on is something like 80-20 in their favor because they've got to recoup that money back quickly. Right. But if he hadn't taken a huge amount of money...
But that's after they've recouped. So they get 100% until they reach the 200 million.
Yeah, and then 80-20.
But for him, he's laughing because he's already been paid.
But that's it. Yeah, but it depends how... Some people don't want the big check. Some people just want to get the money paid through straight away.
Right.
So it depends how you want to structure it.
So when you say you want to get into the rights business, you want to become a record label that then records the artist, and then you own a part of that master.
Well, yeah, we want to become the record label so we can build up catalog. So it's about, we want to have 20 singles, 30, 40, 100 singles signed to us. So it's like you know, we want to accumulate masters. So in terms of rights in
So
master
that's
recordings.
so that's the master recording, and then how does the publishing work?
We're not a publishing company currently, but publishing works in terms of collecting income every time a song's played on radio, every time a song is synced.
But that's for the master, right? That's paid to the master.
No,
right holder.
that's separate. That's separate.
Okay.
So publishing and master are completely separate. So publishing deals with who's written the song.
Yeah.
You know, master's just about you've come to us with this song, we like it, we want to sign it. We're not interested in who's written the song, who's done what. You know, that's
one income stream.
Yeah, we're interested just in the master income stream.
And that's just paid by streaming.
That's just streaming. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're just interested in that.
And then how do the publishing guys get paid?
So publishing gets paid. It's hard if you're a songwriter. It's hard, you know. But publishing is you get paid on radio. So every time a song's played on radio, every time the song is synced on TV or film, you get paid. Every time the song is played in a performance, so the bigger the venue, the more you get paid. So if I'm playing in a stadium, then the performance income there is very big. If I'm playing in a pub, you still get performance income.
But they don't get paid anything from the stream.
They do get paid from the stream, but it's a lesser amount.
Right. So the big money's in owning the master.
On the streaming side, but then at the same time, if you have a radio hit, you can make enormous money on the publishing side.
Okay.
You know?
So there's multiple streams, each paid to different people who've played different part in each record.
Exactly that, yeah.
Right, interesting. And what was your first big hit?
My first hit was a song called Wearing My Rolex with Wiley in 2008.
Right.
So yeah.
I remember that.
And
That's
it was my first, and we were finding Madonna for number 1. It got to number 2. And it was the first time I was like just thrown at the deep end and was like, had to just very quickly sink or swim and learn how to, work in, like, understand hits basically.
And was it easy to then navigate how to collect all the money from it, or
no,
that was like a quick lesson?
No, I didn't know. I didn't know what I was doing. You know, like I look back at like a lot of things I did back then, and I was out of my depth. But I knew I'd been given this opportunity. I had to figure it out. You know, there were times I was like way out of my depth, but at the same time I had to quickly understand how to keep up at this level, or I wouldn't be able to operate at this level.
So what happened in the immediate aftermath of you dropping that tune?
The immediate aftermath, the song became enormous. Wiley went on tour with Jay-Z, like tons of opportunities. We had to then quickly make an album. And it was just like frantically trying to make an album, you know,
right.
and you know,
to like
we had to
capitalize on the success
on the moment, and you know, we kind of like ill-advised him to put out the next single, which didn't do as well. And again, it was just kind of like I don't think I was in a place where I didn't, you know. I obviously now like I could do that with my eyes closed, not in an arrogant way, but because I've lived enough life and I've done it enough times that I understand. Kind of, I feel like I know what would the right moves would be.
So what would you have done different if you could go back in time with current knowledge?
I think what I would have done different is bring different people on board, production-wise, like idea-wise. Yeah, I think there's other people, interesting people I would have brought into the mix, and I would have like focused more on trying to make an iconic album as opposed to sort of just trying to have hits. You know, I think when you try and chase hits, it kind of can come across that way. Versus if you do something authentic, it will come across as that.
So what did you do then? You just tried to make hits, and
I think I tried to make records with him because I was heavily in the studio with him at that time.
Right.
With Jake Gosling and some other people, and I was with him in the studio every day, and it was just like trying to kind of manufacture records that perhaps weren't as authentic.
So you're just trying to go for commercial success as
versus
opposed to
like
try to make a tune that's bubbly.
Credible songs where it's like this speaks to something. Like I don't think there were like 2 or 3 songs on that album that spoke to something or felt like exciting. But I think most of them were just throwaway songs that we thought, well, this could be a hit, you know, as opposed to like doing things that felt like culturally, you know, I often think to myself when I see these lists of like most important sort of British rap albums or this or this. I'm like, you know, we should have had one of those, you know, and we should be in that chart. I've definitely got singles that would be in that, but I don't feel that we made a definitive album, and that's something that always bugged me.
Because at that time, when he made Wearing Your Rolex,
Wearing my Rolex.
Wear My Rolex.
Yeah.
He must have been, that was off the back of like years of being a grime MC.
Oh yeah, but he'd created a movement, a culture. He wasn't a new artist, but that was
so he must have already had like lyrics in in the library bank, whatever.
He's a genius, you know, but it just was. He'd always kind of been amazing at making moments in time, as opposed to like bodies of work. Like he, you know, it's like, I think we made incredible singles, and there was one album where it was like, I felt, one of his albums we had 4 or 5 top 10 hits on, and you know that would have been an iconic album, but he decided to leak it. But that was the closest I think we came to.
Well, and does that mess it up if it's leaked?
Yeah. Because like everyone just had it for free online a few days before it was about to drop.
Right.
So then no one's going to go and buy it because they've got it.
But do people still buy?
No, but
music?
at
that time,
this was 12
there was still
this was
people
12
buying
years ago.
CDs and stuff.
Yeah, I mean now physical product is a big thing. Yeah, physical product accounts for probably 60% of sales now. Vinyl's
really?
Vinyl's back in a huge way. Yeah.
When you say 60% of sales,
so when you see the first week album sales of like, okay, Taylor Swift's at number 1 or whoever's at number 1, Playboy Cardi, whoever's at number 1, it's like, well, probably 50-60% of their sales have come from people going and buying the vinyl version of their album.
Because no one's buying CDs anymore.
No, not really.
So but people buying vinyls come back.
Vinyl's back in the biggest way it's ever been, but people want vinyl to have in their house, not necessarily play, but
it's like iconic.
But yeah, it could be like it's framed on the wall, or it's just in a bookcase, or whatever it is, you know. And it's like, that's
I'm surprised at 60%. So what's the 40%?
Streaming is I mean, streaming account it might actually be more,
but it can't be 1-for-1 stream for.
It's not. But
it's like some ratio of like 10 streams equals 1 sale or something.
No, it's more like 1,000 streams equals 1 sale. Okay. So or 100 streams equals 1 sale. I can't remember the precise amount. Yeah.
Interesting. So, what one failure or setback has taught you the most? Would you say?
I think you learn more from your failures. You know, like
100%.
Every mistake I've made, I've thought more about than any success I've had, and any success I've had. Success is like a drug in terms of it's like addictive and you want more and more of it.
Yeah.
But then it's like failures or setbacks make you adjust yourself or learn more to kind of try and have success, because it's like
you don't question when you're winning. You're like, yes, of course, I'm the best. Yes.
But you know, you do. You kind of start to feel yourself a bit, and I think it's only when you have low moments that you kind of have to look within yourself and think, well,
what am I doing wrong?
Yeah, how could I have done this better? What could I have done to make this situation work better? Or, you know, how could I have done this differently? Or you know, why didn't I get this person? Or why, you know, is this artist I found now the biggest artist in the world? Or whatever it is, you know? So it's like, I've been in situations, you know, countless situations like that. You know, there's not one specific one that comes to mind, but I think it's more, I've had to kind of, I feel like I've learnt more from times where I've had setbacks, or artists have left me, or think, you know, relationships where you think, oh yeah, you know, this producer or this artist is like a lifer, like, you know, we're just gonna like stay together for life, you know? But then they leave, and then it's like you kind of think to yourself, okay, well, what should I have done to prevent that? Or what can, you know, and it's like you look within yourself. Or I think the one thing I can think of is being more, what I've learned over the years is being more open-minded to things. You know, I think a perfect example is, you know, I remember Jake introducing me to Ed Sheeran before he was anyone, you know, and I didn't get it at the time. And
had you seen him perform and do
Ed,
his thing?
Ed performed in my flat in my living room, you know, and it
And
was
you were
like,
like, eh.
no, I thought he was an amazing singer, but I didn't get the rapping, you know. But
Right.
at the same time, I can't sit here and say I could have gone on the journey with him that his manager has gone on, because that's their journey, and like they've done that. Their special bond together is what's made it amazing.
Yeah, I guess.
But at the same
no,
time,
yeah.
I was closed off by the fact that I was like, oh, you know, I'm not sure I like the rapping or whatever it was at the time, as opposed to kind of like
Being open to.
just open to things, or accepting things that, you know, I might not always love something initially, but I shouldn't close myself off from opportunity or close myself off. And I think that's what.
So you had a chance to manage Ed
I
Sheeran,
don't know
maybe?
I don't know if I had a chance.
but like you were in contact with him
but
as a music manager before he was big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know what that meant, but it's like there's been one or two situations like that over the years where I've known people before they've become very big, and through my own like things have been like, oh, I don't know if I've talked myself out of things where it's like, and I think it's a sort of something I'm learning from my own life, where it's like you can stay very closed minded in like a way of thinking or a way of being or a way of operating. You know, like you can be like, oh, well, look, you know, I only like doing this, or I only like going to this type of place, or this or this. And you can have a good existence like that. But I think when you open your mind to like, okay, you know what, initially, this might not be my wheelhouse, but why don't I try it? Yeah. You know, you've got to sometimes
throw yourself into it.
You sometimes like, I didn't know how to get myself involved in a chart battle with Wiley with wearing my Rolex, but I jumped in the deep end of a swimming pool and tried. You know, and it's like I should have had more like maverick faith in myself at certain moments in my life, you know, that could have led to massive opportunities that got presented to me. But I think I don't regret, because I think you can become bitter in life if you look back and you regret, you're like, oh, you hold on to things. I just kind of use those moments to be like, when someone does come and see me, to remind myself, yeah, don't do that again. Yeah. You know, like don't find what's wrong with something. Try and like, if anyone that works for me brings me an artist or thing, and I say to them, it doesn't matter if I like this. What matters is you like this, to the point that I can see the passion you have for this. Because then my job is to help lift you up. And if you're telling me this is what we're betting on, if we're in a casino and you have to bet on red or black, and here's all your money, and we're betting on this, I'm going with that. Doesn't matter if I see it or I like it, because I'm not the oracle.
If the artist likes it, or
no, if someone within our team,
because you have other managers inside your
so
team.
I have to look after a team. So it's like, if someone within our team is like, I love this producer, I love this artist,
and it's not
and
your
it's
thing.
not something that I love, but they can convince me why.
Yeah,
it's my job to back them and not be sort of closed-minded and be like, oh no, we're not going to do that. You know, it's like I have to believe in my people and try and be open-minded, but then open-minded within a realm of like what I actually feel we can add value to. Because
I guess with music, it's so unpredictable as to what will be a hit. It's not like if
no one can sit here and
if
say
I
they
do
know
X,
what's
Y,
a
Z,
hit.
it will guaranteed be.
There's no formula.
Yeah, so
there's no formula.
Yeah,
there's no formula, but there is, you know, just a sense of like,
intuition.
and not everything has to be a hit. It just has to be like, we want to work with things that feel credible and cool.
Yeah.
And when people look at the roster, they're like, oh, you know what? They've got a cool roster, as opposed to like, you know, we're not kind of
factory of hit.
Obviously, you know, we care about that, and we like
success.
Yeah, and we're very fortunate that we've had some success, but it's like, I care more about the fact that people can see we're trying to build something, or year on year, you know, for the size we are, we punch above our weight. You know?
So, like, how many artists have you got under management currently?
I think we've got 8 currently under management.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. That's quite a lot to still dedicate your time to.
But then I'm lucky that I have 4 or 5 people that work for me.
Right.
And their responsibility is to deal with these people day to day. And then I only work on 1 or 2 projects myself. And then I kind of oversee or get involved in all the other projects together, because we work as a team. That's how otherwise, you know, we rather like focus on doing less things, but do them well. We're not trying to do 100 things. We're trying to do a few things we really believe in, and everyone that works for us works on 2 or 3 things, and we all work on them together. And then I jump in, and I like working collaboratively with people. That's how I feel brings out the best in me, in that, you know, we'll all sit and we'll go over ideas and concepts. And with everyone I have a partner in that project or artist, and I find that helps me or pushes me, or I push them in terms of, could we be doing this? Could we be doing that? Because I find otherwise it's quite a lonely situation.
Yeah, it's nice to have someone to bounce ideas off.
That's what I find brings out
that.
the best in me, when I have someone to be like, even, is this mad? And they'll be like, no, that's a good idea. Or someone will say to me, this writer or this person might be good with this person. I'll be like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Or, you know, whatever it may be, you know, yeah, it's just good. I value everyone we work with in a partnership capacity. It's really beneficial to me.
And managing artists must be you must end up having to deal with a lot of their personal life as well, or that must affect the business side quite a lot. Or
no, like we make a very clear distinction of, like, their life is their life. Right. We're there to manage the business. Okay. We don't get involved in anything to do with their personal life. We don't want to know anything to do with their personal life. Our job is to manage the business. We manage whatever it is, limited company, you know, the equivalent of like their entity.
Sure.
You know, if something happens within their personal life that affects the business, then, you know, we obviously are mindful for whatever they need us to do in those moments, whether it's like we're having a baby, we need to stop touring, or we're doing this, or, you know, but we're not there to manage your relationships away from what we're there to do. And I think that's where some people, look, I'm not an oracle, but I think a manager's job is to focus on the business. You're not there to be an artist or a producer or a writer's best friend.
Or like a babysitter.
And they're not your friend. Ultimately, they're your client.
Sure.
And that's how it should be. And they'll see you as their manager, you know, and it's like, ultimately there might come a point where they don't see you as the right person for them. There's nothing wrong with that. And they might want to get a new person. And if it's like you've built this emotional attachment to them as a friend or this or that, then that becomes very hard.
It's like a breakup.
Yeah.
Emotional breakup.
Well, yeah, but it's like, of course I care about everyone I work with.
Yeah.
But then from like having gone through things in life, you have to have distance between, like, okay, I don't call you to talk about my day or what, or this, or you know, banter with you or whatever. I'm here to talk about the business. I'm here to, like.
So have you learned that lesson the hard way? Like
100%.
You've got too involved in their lives.
but I've always wanted to have distance between. I think my whole life, but there were instances in the past where I was very close with acts we worked with, and then you realize, okay, you know what? There has to be a balance here. You know, there has to be kind of like, I'm the manager.
Bit of a line.
Yeah,
somewhere.
like I'm not these guys' friends, or I'm not there for whatever it is. Ultimately, they have to see me this way. I have to see them this way. You know, I don't want to know about their personal life. I don't want to know. I want to know, like, on Monday morning, what we're doing for the week. What's going on? This is this. I don't care what, you know, like, it's not my job to know what you get up on the weekend unless it's a show that we're involved in or something we're involved in. You know?
I mean, obviously, like with music,
and not in a heartless way.
I know what you mean. Like, you've got to somehow draw a line. I mean, for some reason, Entourage keeps popping into my head, the TV series. I keep thinking of, like, they have this thing of, like, we're a group, we're going to go and make it all together, and we'll all be best buddies, and we'll all have success, and we'll all feed off each other. And
look, that's lovely. And, you know, I love that show more than anything. But I think at the same time, it's amazing if you can have that feeling with people you work with. But ultimately, you know, look, in some situations, you know, like I'm lucky with Jake, who we work with. I've been friends with him for a very long time, and we work together.
Like well before you started to work with him.
So I think, but those situations are rare, you know. So it's like, you know, but most situations, it's a situation of like, okay, you know what, we're here to do a job.
Yeah, I guess you're getting new people now as well, so you're just meeting them in a professional context.
But that's it. You know, it's nice, obviously, in those scenarios with Jake or other people where it's like you've been friends with them and now you're working with them and you have the nice balance of knowing who they are as a person and blah, blah, blah. But with new people we're working with, we've been hired to do a job.
Sure.
They're not coming to us to be friends. They're coming to us to be killers. You know, they want us to go and improve their contracts or find them a hit or whatever the dream is.
So are you still getting in the studio yourself much, or no?
Sadly
Now it's
not,
just
no.
like booking it in and sending them off.
But
to
my
do the
idea,
sessions?
but what I'm here now to do is now to kind of think of the ideas of like, okay, well, who could work well in the studio? So it's like I'm vicariously in the studio, but I'm not. I sadly don't get to spend time in studios.
Would
like
you
I
like
used
to be more involved on the creative side?
I think eventually, maybe at some point later in life, but you know, I do. I love the business. I live for the deals now. You know, I love the business side of it. I love.
So let's just break it down. You get a brand new artist. What deals are you trying to make for them? Are you getting them a record deal?
So brand new artists, the deals that we could do, record deal, publishing deal, if something's gone well. If something's gone really well, neighboring rights deal.
What's that?
Neighboring rights is, you know, if you've played on a song. So again, it's
Okay.
like performance income.
Sure.
So then if something's gone really well in America, you could do BMI deal or ASCAP deal. They're two collection societies in America. So it's like if you've had a big hit in America, those things are open. So it's about, as a manager, knowing what deals are out there and what...
And are those the milestones? Like, don't worry, I'll get you those things.
It's
record deal.
It's stepping stones. It's knowing when to do those things. Like, you know...
Is the record deal still the aim? I mean,
But then
you hear so many sort of stories of artists speaking out like, oh, don't get a record deal, it's bad type thing. Is that true? Or stay independent?
I think my view is this. It's like, why do you need the record deal? You know, it's like you should be trying to own your masters. You need the record deal if it's like you're a certain type of artist. If you're trying to be a pop star, if you're trying to be Dua Lipa or Ed Sheeran, you need the record label. You need the level of investment. You need the level of international marketing, infrastructure, team, etc. If you're trying to be, I don't know...
And then you're paying for all that ultimately anyway.
Exactly.
So all that stuff they pay for.
Yeah.
But then that's just a debt.
I think the facts are, if you're trying to be a pop star, Sabrina Carpenter, you need the record label.
Right.
No major pop star has come through independently. If you're trying to be the next Central C or the next Disclosure or, you know, Bicep or whatever, then 100%. There's so many avenues to you being independent and owning your music, and that type of both genres of music lends itself so easily to winning independently.
And then you retain creative control. You're not being pushed into stuff you don't want because it's more commercial.
And it's your label. You own the rights. You can sell those rights at any point. But you know, the one thing that I think will always remain stable is if you're trying to be a pop star, you do need the record label. You know, the investment is too big.
What does the record label do? They will record your stuff.
Record label, no. The record label's there to fund things. So so it's like they'll say, okay, Di, you want to be Elton John. They'll say, okay, you need to go in the studio with this producer, and it's going to cost this much money to make your album. Here's a recording budget. It's going to cost $100,000 to make your album. Here's $100,000 to go and make this album. Try work with this producer, this writer. Okay, here's $100,000 advance, so you've got some money to live on. Now,
is that money not for the recording?
No, so there'll be a separate
producers.
There'll be a separate recording budget. So
Okay.
there'll be a recording budget to pay for producers, mix engineers, studios, blah blah blah. And then there'll be a budget for you, an advance
Just
that goes
cash
in your
that is my money to
that's
keep
your
me going.
money to do as you wish to keep you going. Then they might, if you're, you know, kind of you want to do some shows or you're kind of up and coming artist, it might make sense for you to have tour support where they might say, okay, you know what, it's quite expensive for you to put on shows. So they might say, okay, well, here's $50,000 for you to be able to afford to hire some musicians and go and play some shows in other countries. So we can try and open this out. So they would be like, okay, here's some tour support. And then, you know, those are kind of the initial things. But then what else a major label will bring is a team, digital marketing, international marketing. You know, if a song of yours suddenly starts doing well in France, Germany, Australia, they've got offices in all these places, and they can start spending domestically in those places. So that's the thing of like, if you're having a hit, a major can really start. If you're having a hit, they know
They
how
can
to
leverage off
they
it.
can
Yeah.
leverage it and make
Yeah.
it a lot bigger, you
I
know,
see.
because they have got, you know, they know how to really spend when something's happening.
And is that something which you want to go into when you say you want to go into
So yeah,
the
you know,
rights?
yeah, but
You want to be
we're not chasing hits. We just want to be like signing cool things, you know. And you know, obviously the dream is you find something amazing, but ultimately it's just about finding tasteful things and building things. We've set up a label. So we've got a label called Hotel Records, which we're partners with Jake, that is funded by Atlantic and goes through ADA. It's like a singer-songwriter label. And the vibe is, yeah, just trying to sign cool, credible things that we think we're building a good catalogue of artists we can be proud of.
what genres are you in, or is it quite mixed?
Well, with Jake, it's like singer-songwriters or like bands. It's like kind of things that fit in his wheelhouse of like
Sure.
things he's produced, you know, like Ed-type artists, basically.
Right. And he ended up not producing Ed Sheeran's later albums after Ed went off and did his own thing.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
people need to kind of
Grow
and
try
experiment.
different-
You
yeah.
know, they're still close. We speak to. We're fortunate to still be in his life, and you know, but ultimately there'll always be a special bond because
Sure.
ultimately, you know,
That was the first album. What was that one?
Well, that was called Plus, and then
Plus.
before that they did 5 mixtapes together. You know,
Right.
and then Jake did Thinking Out Loud with Ed on the second album. So it's like ultimately they went on a journey together, and people then
Wanna
grow
try,
apart and
yeah.
want to try other things.
Sure,
There's nothing wrong with
makes
that.
sense.
That's life, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Nice. And then who else do you have then? So you've got Jake. He's like a singer-songwriter, producer. And you just had a huge hit with Water, right?
Yeah, we did the whole Tyler album with a producer called Sammy Sosa. We were working with. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Wow. And that one's got like, was it the first African?
First African song over 1 billion stream. Yeah,
Wow. Nice. So
and it won a Grammy as well. So yeah,
nice.
so that was a good one.
Cool. Congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
Wow. And so how are you seeing the industry change as well? Like now with AI coming in, and you know that seems to be affecting all the creative industries, film. You know,
I think people are worried about copyright and also just kind of creativity, and that I could go on ChatGPT and ask it to write me a song similar to this or this.
Yeah.
And it's like, whilst before, you know, it would be like people's minds or, you know, just kind of creative people in a room coming up with these songs, these iconic songs, you know, Imagine or John Lennon or like Hey Jude or whatever, you know, like iconic songs. Now they'll type into ChatGPT, write me a song like Imagine.
Right.
And it's like, it takes away some of the creative brilliance that you've had in the past. And then, you know, you want to believe it can be used in a way to be like, give me ideas like this, and then it might spur something on that leads to more genius. And I think in that instance, incredible, you know.
Yeah.
I think where it kind of people depend on it too much, I think is not great, you know, because ultimately storytelling is about storytelling. It's not about generic kind of like, tell me what my story should be about from a Google search situation.
I guess it could be like used in certain parts of the workflow of the creative process.
But that's great
yeah,
if it
yeah.
is. But if you depend on it,
But if you're like
yeah.
getting it to come up with even the initial idea, that's kind of ridiculous.
yeah,
That's like,
but then you shouldn't be in that industry. And,
Yeah.
and I guess the other worry initially was when AI first started really kicking off was, you know, people were putting up songs because there's so many AI things where you can mimic people's voices. So
Yeah,
there were
yeah.
songs coming online with like Drake's voice. There was a song with like The Weeknd's voice. And these songs came online, did massive amounts of streams, and then obviously got taken down immediately with like copyright laws and other things. And
so is it currently copyrighted someone's the sound ish
no,
of someone's
because
voice?
you could literally, with various AI things,
or you can untangle it.
No, you could literally write some lyrics now.
Yeah.
Me and you could write a song now and say, record, and on this AI app, I can't remember the name of it, but there's an app where it
Yeah.
literally can transpose something into whatever artist you can think of, and it sounds precisely like that artist. Like note for note. It's that you wouldn't be able. There's no person on earth. Anyone would
Their
listen to
voice
it.
signature
Everything the
is
same.
the same.
Everything the same.
And that's provable. That
No, I mean, but the problem is, then people will be like, okay, well this this is obviously not Adele singing these lyrics.
No, but
or,
if you don't say it is Adele, can you put it out?
I mean, but that's what recently.
That's where it gets kind of
that's where it
grey
gets
now.
grey, and
Yeah,
that's
it's
where
hard.
like copyright law is being kind of worked on, because as with anything, when change comes about, laws and things have to change because people haven't thought
'cause
about these things.
I guess it's like with patents. There might be patents out, but if you adjust a patent a little bit, you can put out something kind of similar.
Well, yeah.
Maybe it's the same with like these voices. If you just twist the voice a tiny bit, so it's not
But-
exactly the
but
same,
it-
but
but
it's
it-
very
but-
similar.
But it's grey,
Yeah.
and that's the problem, because ultimately, if I'm a record label and I've signed Adele, let's just say, to said record label, I don't know why I thought of that, but just if I have signed her, and then you've come along and but I've paid her a lot of money to have her on my label, and then you've come along with your AI platform and you've made an album, but it sounds identical to her.
Yeah.
Where's my protection?
And is there protection?
But there is under copyright law, but obviously there's these grey areas that are being kind of more
Like when the
defined.
Weeknd and the Drake songs
But
came
exactly
out,
that, and
were
those
they able to take them
they
down?
were able to take them down because they were able to prove that these were
It
like
sounds too much like me.
but these were sort of clear sort of imitation. People trying to sort of pretend they were something they weren't. They were falsely kind of misleading to the public of like, this is a new Weeknd and Drake album.
If they actually label it as that.
Yeah, but even if it wasn't labeled as that, it's clear that you're trying to sell something off the back of this. You haven't labeled.
Because people do that anyway in terms of like inspired by other types of
But that's fine if it's
art that's come.
But if it's a
before
cover,
them.
if it's clearly labeled as a cover or an
Or cover,
interpolation.
but even like, I don't know, any art, like people are influenced by other artists.
Oh, but that's
style.
different
Yeah.
to actually copying someone's voice.
Yeah, like exactly, like
but
an
to the point
like
that
a
you could-
impersonation.
Yeah, that's the right word.
if you're
Yeah, but you
impersonating.
wouldn't be able to tell me the difference between the Adele or Drake impersonator or the real thing. You would be like,
Right.
well, that's the same thing. It's so scary how accurate it is. There's no scenario on earth you'd be able to tell the difference.
Yeah. That's
And that was the worry with films. I don't know that much about the movie business, but when all these strikes happened, it was because, they can just get an AI likeness of an actor.
Yeah.
I'd be like, well, we'll just do that.
I've played with it a bit myself. I was just showing some of the guys earlier that you can even you can put a photo of someone in as a reference, and you could even put what clothes they're gonna wear, say what scene they're gonna be in, and then you can lip sync.
But think how much.
And that's just with like cheap retail consumer based
do you know what I mean?
software.
But then if I'm an actor or something, think how that's suddenly like, well,
hey,
what about me? Do you know what I mean? And it's the same if I'm a musician.
Well, I guess it will push the acting into some new area.
I mean,
they'll probably have to start.
I don't know that much about acting,
evolve.
but yeah,
or like singing, or like all the musicians, whatever. Like maybe there's like new types of music that can be made. Maybe there's like music that could be integrated with AI. So you have a live DJ that has cameras facing all the crowds, and it's live getting the reactions. Are they going wild, feeding back into what the next mix might be?
I don't know what it is, but it's exciting, and I think you have to embrace change in technology.
Like I think if you don't, you're going to get left behind.
100%. I remember sitting in a room with this guy called Brian, who was one of the first employees at Spotify, and he showed me Spotify.
Right.
And it would the initial office was like 6 or 7 people in this office in Soho, and I was just like, I don't get it.
You didn't get it?
Well, no, I got it, but I just didn't think anyone would be into it because at the time iTunes was such a thing.
Right.
iTunes was the dominant thing. Everyone had iTunes. Before that, it was like Napster, and I just thought this is going to take so much investment, and so many people need to buy into this for people to stop caring about iTunes.
And for them to be able to pay all the artists. I mean, if
I
you've got everybody on there,
but
which
like,
they did.
Yeah, but at the time, I didn't have the foresight to to see it. You know, I was in Sweden. I remember, you know, not only did I go to the office in London, but I was in the office in Sweden in the early days, and it was like I didn't understand it. I didn't foresee what it could be, you know. But it's like, but I think instead of like we spoke earlier about mistakes and lessons and things, it's like you have to look at things. Sometimes I might not understand what the next technology
that's the thing
is.
now.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like a similar way, I think we have to be very careful to just dismiss AI as like, no,
But
that's
my
not
point.
good for us, right?
But that's my point.
Like
yeah.
in terms of, you know, Blockbuster Video versus Netflix
Yeah.
type thing. Is that happening now? And what big companies or industries could just be totally transformed by that? And
100%.
how do you get ahead of that?
But that's it. That's what we've got to think.
And how can you get your artists to use AI still with a creative? Because I always see AI as just like a very obedient, efficient worker. So in the same way, how if you have someone that works for you, their work is going to be based on how clear your instructions are and how sort of your follow-up to the work they've done, and being like, no, change that, which is what happens anyway in a corporate structure. But you've got somebody who can do the work instantly and isn't upset that you're going to go back to them and say, no, change at all. Totally. They're not going to be like, I just worked on this for 2 weeks. It's going to be like, sure, right away, sir. And they just come up with it.
You've got to embrace change.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that's what I've had to learn. You know, I think I was so closed off sometimes to change or scared of change or other things. And, you know, it's like I've seen so many different iterations. You've got to think, like when I sort of start with wearing my Rolex, that came out on CD. You know, it wasn't even about download then. It was about CD, you know. So it was like I've had to constantly learn and adapt to different iterations of doing things, you know, to now today's age where it's like it's all about, is it going to pop up on TikTok? Is it going to do this? Is it going to do that? Like AI, this, that. It's like if you don't adapt or keep up with
all the latest trends,
then you're going to get left behind.
Yeah, especially as you're kind of always going to want to be tapping into the next generation and their culture and the way they do things and consume, etc. Like you mentioned TikTok. Is that a big part of your strategy now?
Probably 60 or 70% of global hit songs come from TikTok.
Really?
Yeah,
well,
TikTok.
I'm not even like on TikTok.
But TikTok creates hits like nothing else currently.
Is that because there's so much like people take it and then they do these dance routines to it? And stuff?
Things take on a different life on TikTok. You know, like it also just shows you how quickly a song can become. There's never been any platform where you could have no followers on TikTok. Yeah. And you post a video on there tomorrow and you could have 10 million views. Right. But any other platform, you need to have...
They won't even show it to people until you've got more. So
they
will show like a video that was made by somebody with no followers.
Yeah.
Almost,
if they think the content is good enough, you know. Right.
So and is that just the algorithm?
It's just the algorithm, yeah. Oh, you know, but it, you know, and that's just like, you know, countless songs that we've been fortunate to be involved with have become, you know, you mentioned Tyler earlier, like Tyler's song Water became a monster hit from TikTok.
Really? You know, what did you do? Like, how did you manufacture that, or it was organic?
That was nothing to do with us. We don't manage Tyler. You know, we managed the producer who made the song, but it was like... you know, she did a dance routine on TikTok and millions of people...
To that song.
Yeah, to that song, and millions of people copied it, and it just went berserk, you know? Yeah. But it's not always a dance routine. It could be, you know, any type of thing, but people somehow connect to a song, and then a song takes on a completely different life because of something that someone has heard in a song that they think is...
In a way, that's positive because it's democratized everything, right? Anybody can just put a video up on TikTok.
But that's the point. When I came into music, there were a lot of gatekeepers. You know, if you wanted to have a hit, you had to go and please this one at radio or please this one, or, you know, it was like...
Please, in every possible way.
No, but like the labels held so much power in those days. It was like, it wasn't this kind of democratic thing
Sure,
where
anyone-
anyone could have a hit.
Yeah.
The labels kind of were going to decide who was going to have a
Yeah,
hit.
even the like recording equipment and software is just available just
Everything
literally on your phone.
You don't
can
need
make
any.
a hit.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? You don't need a fancy studio. You don't need. It's like you are as creative as you are. Everything is there for anyone to win. Anyone that thinks you need shiny things, or I'm not winning because I'm not with this label or this manager or this or this, you're delusional. You're not winning because you have the wrong mindset.
Yeah.
Everything is there and available for you to win. You just need to wake up and see that it starts with you.
Yeah. And you can start with very cheap, free software on your
100%.
phone, start to
Yeah.
record, get creative, and just start
Because
putting
if
down
you can't,
layers.
if you can't do it like that,
Yeah.
you're not gonna go into like the massive fancy studio and it's all gonna be better.
And it's not necessarily better as well, right?
100%.
You know,
I remember being in fancy studios with people and them saying to me, you know what, like it's not really a vibe. Like it was better like when we were doing music like
in our bedroom,
in the bedroom or in the shed or whatever it is, because it just felt like raw.
So much
and
of
more
about
vibe.
that, like with creativity, is about like creating a vibe and then capturing the vibe, right, into whether it's audio or video or both, and getting the right setting and workflow to consistently make that magic. Like you look at some of these producers like Rick Rubin, it's like doesn't even get involved in anything.
I'm obsessed with Rick Rubin.
Yeah,
me
too.
I'm finishing his book at the moment.
Yeah.
And
I finished his book. I listened to the
same.
audio book because it's him talking. So
Yeah.
it's like he's got such a calm voice as well.
But you know what it is? There's so many inspirational quotes. So like, there's a particular quote that's
about
actually
creativity.
not in the book, but he said once that I recite all the time, which is like, your job as an artist is to paint, right?
Right.
My job as a manager is to frame and sell.
Right.
I don't tell you what to paint. You have to be able to paint.
Yeah.
You know, like too many artists will think, oh, you're the manager or the record label. You've got.
But he's down as a producer, right?
Yeah.
Or what is it? So
he's a producer, but he co-founded Def Jam as well.
Sure. Yeah.
But you know what? A lot of people have the misconception is like, oh, we need to be with this. If we get with this shiny manager or this shiny label, all this success is going to come, or this thing's going to be better. But ultimately, if you aren't great at your craft, at painting or creating, what's going to be better? You know, ultimately, if you have that vibe within you, if it's like you are that Basquiat or you are that kind of creative genius, it's going to come to light. You know?
And the manager and label's job is to like shine more light onto what you're doing. But they can't like elevate something that isn't there anyway.
You can't make someone, you can't turn someone into, you know, Kendrick Lamar or Basquiat or whatever who just aren't that.
You can't polish a turd,
you can't. There needs to be that amount of talent where all you're doing then is just like shining a bigger light on that talent.
Exactly, elevating them.
The talent needs to be there to start with.
Yeah. So how do you source talent? Like if there's some young guy thinks what advice would you give to some young guy? Should they first work on their craft and start putting stuff out solo before they think of getting like a manager contract or a record label?
I think I say to people like this, like a manager relationship is like a relationship, like a dating relationship. You're not going to rush into getting married, are you? You want to get to know someone. You want to feel that this is right for you. So it's like you need to kind of feel you're in a place where you can't now do things. You need help to elevate what you're doing. You know, so it's like that's the moment you need a manager.
Like a push up.
Yeah,
You've already got some momentum.
You've got things as far as you can yourself, and now's the time that you need help to kick on.
Sure.
Or that you're just this raw talent, and it's like, you know, we spot a diamond in the rough, and it's like, okay, you know what, we want to go on this journey from the very beginning with this person.
So how would you source talent? Like,
well,
through your existing contact.
Yeah, through existing contact, things we've done. You know, people sometimes come to us with opportunities, or just constantly got to be on your grind. You've got to be letting people know you're open and available to things. You know, I also just spend a stupid amount of time on TikTok. It's also just like, but it's also just like our team's job to try and find stuff as well.
Like, I'm working.
But like in the evenings or whatever, like, that's how I have found things.
Right.
I found.
So have you discovered an artist on TikTok? And
I
then
mean,
been
yeah,
like,
I've discovered like a song that became a hit on TikTok. I've discovered a couple of things that became good on TikTok that we managed to get involved with. So
right.
there have been things, but then it's like I don't want to just base things on TikTok. I want to base things on how I feel about something. Like I'm from the same era as you, where it's like I want to hear something and it just moves me.
Sure.
I don't, and then it's like too many people now just care about TikTok. Oh, what's it doing on TikTok? What's it doing on socials? I care about what does it do to me as a person? Do
How
I
does it make you
ultimately
feel when
yeah?
you listen to it?
Is this an artist proposition? I don't care about one-off hits.
Because I guess like you're saying, it's like a marriage. It's like a long-term
Yeah.
relationship. So it's also the type of person, that's
someone
what
that you feel I can work with.
Yeah.
I feel that our personalities are aligned, or I can bring out the best in this person.
Yeah.
I believe in this person with my whole heart, because it's ultimately I have to believe in this so much that I'm the one selling it.
You're going to be investing in it.
yeah,
Yeah. So if you don't believe in it, people will tell. Like
Yeah.
the tone of your voice, and
I've
if you're
got
not
to-
excited.
But yeah, I've got to go in a room and sell this to people. So it's like I have to like deliver.
So a lot of being a manager is being like a salesman. You're
100%.
pitching all the time.
100%.
This guy's the best.
But then ultimately, sometimes, we're lucky that we have one or two unbelievably articulate artists we work with. We work with an artist called Koji Radical.
Yeah.
And he's like just the most brilliant artistic and articulating person you'll ever meet. Like when we have meetings about his music, we bring him along and just let him talk, because no one can explain him or his music better than he can.
Right.
And,
And that passion.
but because he's so unbelievably, just
creative.
yeah, and just the way he can express things, you'll just sit there and be like, I could never do that enough justice,
Sure.
and so in those situations,
What he said. Yeah. Yeah.
but no, but then
that's
it's
the best way. Yeah.
But then it's about, okay, this is his vision, this is what he's saying. How can we put things around this to make sure we deliver from our side what he then needs?
Yeah. I guess a lot of like with music and sort of artistry is just show the art, and that will speak for itself to a lot of the
I mean, that's what you want it to be. Yeah. Ultimately, that's what it should be. It's not about. It's about staying true to what we want this to be. It's. I get to my point where I think I went wrong in the early days of Wiley, of like just chasing the hit or this or this. I think if you stay true to what ultimately you feel you are, that's more authentic and will be more long lasting than if you're constantly trying to chase what you think is a hit, because people will see through that as disingenuous.
Yeah. So you just look for people who are genuine, and it can be any genre as long as it affects you, or you feel like the artist is.
Yeah, and anything
really
we feel
passionate.
we can add value to. It can't just be anything. It's got to be something where we think, okay, you know what, we can actually add value to this, or this makes sense within the wheelhouse of what we're doing or what we're known for doing.
So what are you known for doing? It's like
I think we're known for sort of looking after producers and songwriters, and I think we're known in the sort of hip hop world and the dance world. I think it would be as much as we might love the Arctic Monkeys or the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I don't think we would know what we were doing as much with a band. You know? And it's like that's.
So you're still going out to Ibiza, all that stuff
like that, yeah, for
Miami.
sure.
Yeah. How much are you traveling?
A fair bit, but it's like I travel when it's needed for me to travel, not just like for fun. Back in the day, it might be like, oh, it's fun, let's go to this or this. Now it's like I've got a roster of people, and is the best use of my time me being at this thing when it probably isn't.
So you were like a manager before. Now you're like a manager of managers.
Yeah.
So
now it's my job to manage the
up,
artist, but also manage the team. So it's like that's why it isn't always the best use of my time for me to be. Oh, let me go here, let me go there because it's fun or this. I go to the gigs or I go to the shows where, I have to be there because it's essential. With our artist Elderbrook, I'm going to his shows in Los Angeles and Red Rocks like in a few weeks because those are massive shows and I've got to be there. But it's like I don't need to go.
So what are you doing when the artist is doing this thing? Or you're just helping to organize a support?
No, it's my job to make sure like good people are coming to the shows. Like let me invite partners from Spotify, Apple, whatever it is. Let me get good people down to these shows, bring other opportunities. Like it's my
So like before and after the show, you might set up an interview or some meetings with him, with
It's
some
a-
people from
it's-
that city.
it's about maximizing the time
While
in
you're
those
there.
places. Yeah, I'm not just
Right.
there to like, oh, let me go and hang out and have a good time. Like
Sure.
it's about, making sure, okay, these shows that we've conceptualized for this amount of time suddenly now look the way we want them to look, or everything is going, or the people that we're paying to film these shows, or this, everything feels and looks the way we want it to. You know?
Sure. So you have teams that will do like
Yeah,
video productions
exactly
of what they're
that.
doing.
Yeah,
And everything,
we have teams that build out the shows, do the visuals for the shows, do all these things.
But do you
it's
manage
like,
their social media as well?
we have agencies that come on board and do that with all our artists. Yeah, we
Right.
don't get involved in that
Cool.
stuff.
And how do you feel about like this? When you look at a lot of these documentaries of these music stars behind the scenes, a lot of them follow the same trajectory of success, getting into drugs and alcohol, and then just like, almost sort of
I think it was,
reaching a very bad place, basically.
I
of
think
like,
I think you know what it is. The music industry is a lonely place and a fickle place, and I think
Yeah.
you've got to be. You can get caught up in the glitz and the glamour, right? Or you can see it as a business. It's like, yeah, of course, there comes times where you have fun, but then there comes times where you're like, okay, you know what? If I want to tour at this level, or if I want to operate at this level,
yeah.
this is the way you have to conduct your life. And
So
not,
what is
not,
that?
not
Like
everyone.
less drinking, less drugs.
Well, yeah, because it's like,
It's not sustainable to
it's not
be
sustainable.
yeah.
A perfect example is Scott Storch, right? He's an amazing producer. He was probably one of the most successful producers in the world.
Yeah.
He
Extremely talented
yeah,
dude. Like,
but he blew $100 million on drinking and drugs.
wow.
And it's like, but he's done every hit song you can think of, but by his own admissions, and he said this on countless things. I've even spent time with him in Miami, and it's like, that's an example of someone where it's like you get to a level and you start to think, I've got to be in this lifestyle. I've got to be in this lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you're chasing, once you've made a bit of money, you hang out with people that have more money than you. So it's like, then you've got to try and keep up with their
And
lifestyle.
floss equally.
And then
yeah.
it's like you're constantly chasing as opposed to being happy within. And I think, a perfect example is like some of the biggest touring acts, biggest DJs in the world don't drink, because it's like,
Yeah.
you know what, if they're like doing shows every single day, if they're
Yeah.
getting drunk or
Every single time they're out in that environment, because everyone else is drinking, right?
yeah,
Or
doing whatever they're doing,
doing other stuff in that environment. So if they're the sort of party maker, effectively as the DJ, and they get sucked into that,
but it's not sustainable.
Yeah, it's not sustainable, right?
And if you're performing at a certain level, you're not going to be able to do that for your own health. So it's
like, do you encourage that amongst your artists?
Well, I
that,
think it's
try
100%, because it's a business. Sort of say
Yeah.
to them, ultimately, I'm not here to be your parent. You've got to make your own life choices, but ultimately you have to take this seriously
yeah.
and see this as a business.
So
And this is like, there's a shelf life to how sort of, there isn't this magic thing where, oh yeah, you know what, this is going to sustain at this level for the next 10 years and just do what you want. Ultimately, how you are, or the shows you put on, will determine how long your career is going to be. If you kind of put on great shows, you look after yourself, you're not messy, you don't do craziness online, then you can keep building and building and building. But if you're suddenly like getting, messy and drunk and this and that, and like falling on stage or offending people, then
or
people
messing your mix up,
Yeah,
or missing your
pe-
lyrics. Or
people are gonna turn left from you, aren't they? Because it's
Yeah.
gonna be like, well, this person's a car crash,
yeah,
And it's about, I think, it can be, a manager as well has to see when you do need to step in and try and help, as opposed to just say, well, okay, you know what, they're happy, they're doing what they're doing, I'm making my money.
It's so interlinked, right? Because they are the business.
Yeah.
So
You have to protect the business. You have
Yeah.
to. Like, you have to, if you think something's derailing, you have to protect the business, and you have to think, okay, you know what, they need to stop doing shows right now. They need help. They need to get better. Let's focus on them as the individual, because ultimately, if they're not right, or they can't, they need to be right to keep this business sustainable.
yeah, and I think it's a bit of a myth that like you need to be, some people think it can enhance their creativity. Yeah, and maybe it can, but I think people can tap into all that naturally as well.
100%. And
You
look,
know?
maybe it can as well, you know, in the studio and stuff like that. But I think if you're trying to tour to a big level,
Yeah.
like if you're doing a tour like, you know, like a Tiesto or a Guetta or Calvin Harris or like a Ed Sheeran tour or Coldplay tour, where it's like you're on tour for like a year and a half, shows every constant shows.
Every day, every other
Yeah.
day, flying to
You-
new
you-
locations.
You,
Even all the traveling like takes its toll.
You
Yeah.
would, you know, you would, you know, you'd probably die if you were kind
And
of
they
like,
do, right?
Yeah, you
A
know,
lot, some of them do die.
no, but
That's the
that-
sad,
the
sad
reality.
thing about
Yeah.
it. It's like these idols that get pushed and they just, you know, end up facing oblivion eventually just from their own, you know, behaviors and stuff. Yeah. So,
But I think that's where a manager has to be more aware of like what's going on, you know,
Yeah.
and kind of
and
like
not encourage it as well.
or,
'cause
or not
I'm sure there's
ignore-
even some managers that are, like
or not-
themselves have their
or,
issues.
or not ignore it, you
Yeah.
know, because it's like, oh, we were doing so well, we turned a blind eye. I think you're culpable if you're doing that because ultimately, yeah, times are great, we're all making money, blah, blah, blah. But then ultimately, you need to also
Step in.
be a good person,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and kind of like be like, okay, well, you know what, like times might be great, but this person is clearly suffering
Yeah.
and needs help, you know?
Yeah, it's true. And it seems to me, anyway, that the next generation is more conscious of all that. Like you see, drinking numbers are going down. I mean, I don't see it as totally inconceivable that drinking could go the way of smoking in terms of like everyone suddenly realizes this is bad for us. And
I
it
think-
kind
look, I
of
think
gradually peters out, you know?
Potentially, I don't know. Look, things in moderation are fine, you know. I think like it's just about being,
Yeah.
you know, aware and like work within your limits, as it were. you
Yeah,
know?
I guess it's just because there's such a culture of alcohol being overlaid onto any social situation.
Oh yeah, but you know,
You know?
when you're an artist, sorry, excuse me, you have something called a rider. So when you do a performance,
Yeah,
you can ask for anything you want on your rider.
well, and that's like in your green room,
So,
whatever.
so that in your green room or on stage when you're performing.
Right.
So you could turn around and say, I want 10 bottles of tequila, 3 bottles of
Right.
champagne, and that whatever venue you're performing at has to perform it, give it to you because that's
Right.
in your contract.
Right.
So it's like every night you can have unlimited free alcohol, whatever type of alcohol you want. The
Yeah.
bigger the artist you are, that you can ask for anything. You know,
Right.
so it's like, and most times people are doing that to give it to their friends or people that have come
Sure,
to. But
that have
it's
come
like,
to,
yeah, but at the same time, it's like.
I
That's
guess
a
now-
slippery slope. If it's like if every night you're kind of drinking like that,
Yeah, yeah.
it's not. That's not a
I
vibe,
think
you know.
I'd be asking for like a massage and an ice bath or
Yeah.
something. You know, so- you okay?
Yeah, my headphones were just hurting me a bit. Sorry.
Okay. You okay? You want to break a bit, or you alright for a bit?
Maybe another like 5-10 minutes. Yeah,
Okay.
need to feed her soon.
All right. Yeah. Is Layla hungry?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, was there a single moment when you thought, "I've made it"? And is there such thing as?
I don't think
Made.
I don't think there was that moment. There've been moments where I felt like this is great, but there haven't been. But I think the point is that we're going soon. The point is, I think you constantly, if you kind of think, oh great, I've made it, then I think that's the minute you fall.
Yeah.
I think you need to be constantly,
Striving.
and I'm never satisfied. You know,
Yeah.
like I remember, and this is perhaps something that I've looked at within myself. I remember we had a very big hit with an act some years ago, and we were in a house in Ibiza, and the song had just sold 1 million copies around the world, and everyone was celebrating and jumping in the pool, and they were like, "Why aren't you happy? Why aren't you celebrating?" I was like, "Because I'll celebrate when it sells 5 million."
Oh.
You know, because for me,
10 million.
no, but for me, it wasn't enough. Like I didn't think that was worth celebrating. Even, but now I'm like, that's incredible, and I should have been happy.
Yeah.
But I felt that I needed more. You know, and
which is a never-ending story, right?
but that's what it means.
always want more and more.
At some point, you have to be content. You know, and I think, I never have felt like I've made it. You know, I feel like I'm constantly the underdog is how I feel, like constantly trying to prove myself. And then every now and then people are like, oh yeah, you know what? I describe myself as like like a scrappy boxer who somehow just keeps
coming back.
keeps coming back.
Rocky.
Yeah, like, you know, I keep kind of getting these title shots, or I'm just not going away.
Right.
And
which is a huge thing, to be persistent, right?
Yeah.
And to have that determination, you know.
And I think that's what one of my attributes has been, in that, like, I've always been persistent. I've always felt that like nothing is like, and I've also kind of like
shamelessly at times.
Yeah, but I'm okay with that, because I'd rather like
thick skin.
I'd rather go and shoot for the stars and get like kicked down than like think, oh, what if, you know? Because it's like, you never know. Like, you know, I mentioned earlier there was a songwriter we have, you know, similar. Like, I'd rather aim for the highest possible session and be told no than be like, oh, just accept like some mid-level thing.
There's an expression in like Brazil, like, a no you already have.
But 100%.
You've already got no.
But but yeah, that's the perfect analogy. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and anything else from that is great.
So like, where do you see A-list in the next 5-10 years heading towards?
I think, you know, building rights in terms of record label, trying to build out, you know, more artists, hopefully opening a business in Los Angeles, and you know, hopefully becoming.
How come Los Angeles?
Because that's kind of the hub of where things are. You know, right? Everything is there. Yeah.
So you're saying so
Los Angeles is kind of the epicenter of my business and creativity and stuff like that. And I think, wanting to be able to have a hub where we can kind of offer people some kind of global service of being able to say, you know, we operate in multiple markets is what interests me. I'm super interested in emerging markets, like us being more involved in India, us being more involved in, because Latin music has had such a thing, K-pop music has had such a thing, but I think India is going to be the biggest market in the world in terms of, you know, so many, there's a billion people or something in India, and so many of those people are going to start buying streaming services
as they get
and other things.
As well. I think they've got a growing middle class, and I think they have some of the most new millionaires per year in India. You know,
all the opportunities are going to be there. I think, you know, or a lot of opportunities.
And they're mainly English speaking as well. So
I think there's a lot of wins to be had there. You know.
Right. So do you see yourself opening up A-list?
No, I think it's I think it's just like a lot of people focus on what's going on in the UK. I always focus on what's going on globally, as opposed to like, oh, what can our people be doing? There's so many other countries in the world, you know, and it's not about what are our producers doing in the UK today. It's about what are they doing in Los Angeles? What are they doing in Latin America?
Because there's always a thing of breaking America, right? Which a lot of UK artists do find difficult.
For sure.
Right. So having a office there makes sense.
100%. I think that's the goal. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, I wish you all
Thank
the
you
luck
so much.
going forward, and
thank you so much for having us. I'm sorry for her disruption. So
well, I think Layla was a star of this show.
There you go.
We'll have to do an
Layla, it's your first podcast. How do you feel?
I feel great.
Okay. Thanks, John.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
There you